tea, a little detox tea.
Yeah, and it's what you need to do to get your body.
Yeah.
But it's
Already?
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting of February 3rd, 2015. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos present. President Breed.
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Campos.
Present.
Campos present. Supervisor Christensen.
present.
Christensen present. Supervisor Cohen.
Present.
Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell present. Supervisor Kim. Kim present. Supervisor Marr.
Here.
Marr present. Supervisor Tang. Tang not present. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener present. Supervisor Yee. Yee present. Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Can you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any communications?
There are no communications today, Madam President.
Okay. Can you please read the consent agenda?
Items 1 through 7 comprise the consent calendar. These items are considered routine. Unless a member objects, a matter may be removed and considered separately.
Colleagues, would anyone like to sever any items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On items 1 through 7, Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen?
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell? Aye. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang? Tang, absent. Supervisor Wiener? Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee? Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. There are 10 ayes.
These items are finally passed and adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 8 is an ordinance to amend the Public Works Code to amend fees and modify certain requirements for personal wireless service facilities site permits and making environmental findings.
Same house, same call. This ordinance is finally passed. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 9, ordinance to amend the Planning Code to define homeless shelter and establish zoning open space parking policies for this use, and to amend the Administrative Code to require operational standards and making the requisite findings.
Colleagues, can we do this same house, same call? This ordinance is passed unanimously. Finally passed unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 10 is an ordinance to amend the Administrative Code to establish a Children, Youth, and their Families Oversight and Advisory Committee and a Service Provider Working Group as provided for in Charter Section 16.108-1.
Same house, same call. This ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Madam Clerk, please call the next item.
Item 11 is a resolution to retroactively approve amendments to 2 agreements for long-term mental health services for Crestwood Behavioral Health Services, Mental Health Management, doing business as Canyon Manor for a total amount of approximately $113 million.
Colleagues, can we do this same house, same call? This resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call the next item?
Item 12, resolution to retroactively authorize the Recreation and Park Department to accept and expend a $500,000 grant from the Parks Alliance for the children's play area in Joe DiMaggio Playground from February 1st, 2015 through June 1st, 2016.
Same house, same call. This resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 13 is a resolution to retroactively authorize the Recreation and Park Department to accept and expend a $3.5 million grant for the Randall Museum renovation project from the Randall Museum Friends from December 17, 2014 through August 31st, 2016.
Same house, same call. This resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 14, resolution to authorize the Public Utilities Commission General Manager to enter into a customer generation agreement with indefinite terms with the Pacific Gas and Electric Company for a solar power project at Pier 1.
Colleagues, can we do this same house, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 15, resolution to authorize the property lease to Ray Chris for property located at the number 2 Goff Street, also known as 86 Otis Street, for the first and second floors to commence upon board approval for an approximate monthly rent of $41,000 and authorizing city-funded tenant improvements at an estimated cost of approximately $611,000.
Madam Clerk, the House has changed. Can you please call the roll?
On item 15, Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr. Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 15 is a resolution to approve an emergency public work by the Public Utilities Commission at the Potrero Terrace located at 1099 Connecticut Street with an amount not to exceed $425,000 pursuant to the Administrative Code Section 660 to replace the Power Enterprise space heating boiler and distribution piping.
Same House, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 17 is a resolution to authorize the General Manager of the Public Utilities Commission to execute a master license agreement for outdoor distributed antenna system pole installation between the City and Mobilite Investments for a term of 12 years to commence following board approval.
Same House, same call. This resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 18, resolution to retroactively authorize the Department of Emergency Management on behalf of the city as the fiscal agent for the Bay Area Urban Area Security Insurance Program to accept and expend an increase to the fiscal year 2014 UWASI grant funds in the total amount of approximately $23 million from September 1st, 2014 through May 31st, 2016.
Colleagues, can we do this? Same House, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 19, resolution to retroactively authorize the Department of the Environment to accept and expend an approximate $6.7 million grant from the California Public Utilities Commission through Pacific Gas and Electric Company for the Energy Efficiency Program, January 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2015.
Colleagues, can we do this? Same House, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 20 is an ordinance to amend the Planning Code to consolidate the definitions and controls for awnings, canopies, and marquees into a single section and revise the controls for certain zoning districts and amend the zoning map to conform with the code amendments and making other conforming requirements and prohibitions in addition to affirming the department's CEQA determination and establishing the appropriate findings.
Thank you. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This legislation really rationalizes and cleans up our approach to business signs in San Francisco. The code was a little bit all over the place on this, and there were some gigantic loopholes. And so this will help have, I think, a much better and more consistent approach to business signs in our neighborhoods. There are times when signs and awnings can become effectively blight in a neighborhood and are inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood. And this will help make sure that business signs and awnings are consistent with neighborhood character. In addition, it will now permanently close a gigantic loophole in our billboard restrictions. You'll recall that we previously passed interim controls to close the loophole that occurs when there's a certain type of business which they'll pretend to put up a business sign, but it's effectively a billboard. And it was allowed by this loophole in our planning code, and so we're closing that loophole to really comply with the will of the voters. The voters have repeatedly stated with large majorities that they do not want new billboards in particular in San Francisco, and so we need to make sure that we don't have billboards that are masquerading as business signs, and this will permanently close that loophole. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Kim?
Thank you, and I just want to thank Supervisor Weiner for his work on this issue, and just want to acknowledge, because I, over the last couple of days, I've heard from a few of our constituents that are concerned about a particular portion of this code, which, as amended at Land Use Committee, keeps signage that is in the C3O district at 100 feet, which is currently what is in our planning code. I've heard just from two of our residents that they'd like to see this come down to 60 feet. I just wanted to state, because I wasn't following this issue or tracking it over the last couple of months, our office is still exploring what the difference of 4 stories would make in terms of beautification in the C3O district. I currently don't have a position on it. I feel very comfortable passing it as the way it's currently within the planning code at 100 feet today, and really examine what some of the neighborhood concerns are as particular, the Trans Bay area turns into a mixed-use neighborhood. So not strictly a financial or business district, but one that includes residents as well. So we just want to understand the issue a little bit better. If the issue is specifically around signage around the park, the Trans Bay Rooftop Park, then I would rather carefully craft legislation that would specifically address the buildings around the park area. But at this time, not seeing a huge difference between signage at 10 stories versus 6 stories, I feel comfortable with going with Planning Department's recommendation and what came out of Land Use Committee, and we'll be supporting this legislation today as is.
Okay, Supervisor Christensen.
Only clarification I would have is I'm presuming that signs that would be considered historic, for example, in our district we have a lot of unique signage in Chinatown, Broadway area, old blade signs, that sort of thing, and I'm presuming that most of those are code compliant for their district, for their area. And what sort of exemptions could allow historic signage to remain perhaps when codes have changed?
Supervisor Christensen, I'll allow the sponsor to respond to that. Supervisor Weiner.
For that particular question, I don't think we have anyone from the planning department here. My understanding is that historic signs are exempt from the legislation. One of the things that the legislation does do is when you have a non-compliant sign, putting aside historic signs, because we know we have some signs and awnings that are pretty problematic and are not compliant. When a business is vacant, becomes vacant for a certain period of time or longer, the new business coming in would no longer be grandfathered and would have to put in a code-compliant sign and awning.
Okay, Supervisor Christensen, does that help address your concern?
Desirable signs in the process.
So there will be an opportunity to review this again. This is the first reading, so at that time maybe we can resolve your issue and if necessary make amendments at that time.
Great.
Okay, seeing no other names on the roster, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance pass on the first reading unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 21 is an ordinance to amend the Planning Code to establish a procedure for requesting a reasonable modification to accommodate a disability pursuant to federal and state fair housing laws of code requirements or Planning Department practices and procedures, in addition to affirming the Planning Department CEQA determination and establishing the appropriate findings.
Can we do this, take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is excuse me, before I move on, Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you for item number 21. Colleagues, this legislation is part of the ongoing work around our update to the city's 2014 housing element, and specifically it prescribes a process for a person with a disability to apply for a reasonable accommodation from the planning code in order to eliminate barriers to housing. This is important so that people with disabilities have full access to housing, to make sure that people can age in place in their own homes, and that people with mobility or other mobility challenges or other disabilities have the same access to housing as everyone else. The process will take the form of an administrative variance, and this is a long overdue step to make sure that everyone has access to housing in San Francisco.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. Not seeing any other names on the roster. Colleagues, can we take item number 21, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is passed on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can you please call unanimously? Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 22 is an ordinance to amend the Planning Code to consolidate definitions, reorganize Article 2, and make other non-substantive changes to update, clarify, and simplify code language, in addition to affirming the Planning Department's CEQA determination and establishing the appropriate findings.
Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, as you know, the Planning Code is probably the most amended portion of our city's municipal code, with hundreds of pieces of legislation over the years addressing various issues, enabling new uses, and restricting others. Over the years, with so many amendments, inconsistencies, errors, and other flaws have inadvertently accumulated in the Planning Code. This legislation updates Article 2 of the Planning Code by reorganizing, consolidating, and making consistent hundreds of pages of the code. This was supported unanimously by the Planning Commission. The legislation does not make any substantive amendments to the code, but instead it makes it easier, I think, for everyone, including members of the public, to understand it and use it. I want to especially thank Aaron Starr from the Planning Department for his work on this incredibly massive task. It's not often that we have a 500-page ordinance that comes before us. I also want to thank the Deputy City Attorney who drafted it, Judy Boyajian, as well as Tom Radulovich, who put in a lot of time supporting the Planning Department's and City Attorney's efforts. We do have some technical amendments to these technical amendments that the City Attorney has suggested in terms of recent identification of some technical issues that need to be resolved. So, Mr. Givner.
Deputy City Attorney John Givner. We didn't make copies and circulate these amendments because it would have taken 6,000 pages to give them to you all. So we're making a few small changes just to consolidate the definition of formula retail so it doesn't appear twice in the code. We're amending pages 24 and 456 to make sure that there's only one definition in the Planning Code of formula retail, and also on page 450, just correcting a cross-reference, and hopefully the legislation is now perfect.
Okay.
So, Madam President, I would move that we adopt the technical amendments as outlined by Mr. Givner.
Okay. Supervisor Weiner has moved the adoption of the amendment, technical amendments, as proposed by our City Attorney, seconded by Supervisor Yee. Without objection, the amendments are adopted unanimously. And on the underlying item number 22, as amended, can we take this item same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is passed on this first reading unanimously without as amended. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 23?
Item 23 is an ordinance to amend the general plan by amending policy 3.6 of the recreation and open space element to reflect adoption by reference of the urban forest plan, phase 1 street trees, in addition to affirming the planning department CEQA determination and establishing the appropriate findings.
Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you again, Madam President. Colleagues, this legislation amends the general plan to set the city's long-term strategy to ensure the health and sustainability of our street trees, all 105,000 of them. This plan has been a long time in the making, and I want to thank the Planning Department and the Department of Public Works, particularly John Sway and Carla Short, for leading a very thoughtful and in-depth process to produce what really is a cutting-edge document. The plan was supported unanimously by the Planning Commission and the Urban Forestry Council. Colleagues, we know that healthy tree-lined streets are a key component of strong and vibrant and beautiful neighborhoods. We have over 100,000 street trees in San Francisco. They make our neighborhoods more walkable, more sustainable. They remove pollutants from our air and from the water, and they confer many other benefits in terms of quality of life and environmental protection. As we also know, today our street trees in San Francisco are not in good shape. Every time it rains or if there are strong winds, we hear of trees falling or collapsing or branches falling off. And this is really due to inadequate maintenance. The city has a terrible policy of requiring adjacent property owners to be responsible for the care and maintenance of street trees, whether or not the property owner planted the tree, owns the tree, wants the tree, or has the ability to take care of it. This is both unfair and it leads to inconsistent maintenance. And indeed, our street tree population is shrinking because of the resistance to planting new trees, because every time we do that, people know that the city is ultimately going to dump the tree on the homeowner for maintenance. We are trying to address this through a long-term sustainable funding strategy, and we're continuing to work on that. But this plan sets broad parameters in terms of how we should be caring for our urban forest, how we should be expanding the number of trees, and ultimately how we should be paying for it. So, colleagues, I ask for your support in moving forward this important urban forest master plan.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is passed on the first reading unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 24 is an ordinance to amend the zoning map to rezone a parcel located at 1600 through 1612 Cortlandt Avenue from heavy commercial and industrial protection zone special use district to production, distribution, and repair, in addition to affirming the department's CEQA determination and establishing the appropriate findings.
Can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance pass on the first reading unanimously. Madam Clerk, we will be skipping over our 2:30 and 3 o'clock special orders until that time and move on to roll call for introductions.
First to introduce new business is Supervisor Campos.
Thank you very much, and I have a number of items. Let me begin by saying that today I will be introducing an amendment to a prior law that I authored and that we passed with the significant support of the vast majority of members of this board, and that's our relocation assistance ordinance to help individuals facing evictions under the Ellis Act. In October 2014, U.S. District Court Judge Stephen Breyer struck down the relocation assistance ordinance that was passed by this board on a number of grounds. And at that point in his ruling, Judge Breyer raised a number of concerns around the law that we enacted. The legislation that we passed increased relocation assistance for tenants evicted under the Ellis Act to give evicted tenants in San Francisco a fighting chance to actually stay in San Francisco. My ordinance required landlords to pay the difference between the market rate of an apartment and the rent control rate, for 2 years. Our city attorney, and I want to thank our city attorney for the very strong and excellent representation that they've provided in defense of this law. Currently, the case is pending before the Ninth Circuit. Today, I'm introducing amendments to that law, which I believe essentially make the federal case moot. The amendments, we believe, address all of the concerns that have been raised by Judge Breyer. Even though we believe that Judge Breyer simply got it wrong, and we respectfully note that, we still want to address the concerns that he raised by doing the following. The first thing the amendments do is that it caps relocation assistance payments to $50,000. The second thing that it does is that it requires that the tenant use the relocation assistance payment on replacement housing and things like moving costs or any other costs incurred to mitigate the negative impact of that eviction. And then the third thing that it does is the amendment specifies the method that must be followed by the controller to estimate the market cost of an apartment. Colleagues, we passed this law with a supermajority of this board, and I respectfully ask for your support in passing the changes that I have outlined. I believe that these changes, which we passed in consultation with the various parties that were involved in the original legislation, that these changes strike a balance to address the concerns that have been raised by the court but at the same time providing a real solution to tenants that are impacted by Ellis Act evictions. The second item that I have is a resolution in support of farm workers, of Garawan farm workers. In 1990, farm workers at Garawan Farms voted for representation by the United Farm Workers. This is something that they voted in 1990 in a state-conducted secret ballot election. The Agricultural Labor Relations Board then certified the United Farm Workers as the Farm Workers Union representative. For 23 years, Garawan Farms has been making various attempts to prevent implementation of this United Farm Workers contract. As a result, in 2013, the United Farm Workers invoked California's mandatory mediation and actually requested that the state appoint a mediator, which the state did. This mediator issued a 3-year contract which included retroactive wage increases and holiday compensation that was to take immediate effect. To date, to this day, in 2015, this company has failed to pay the workers the increased wages that were directed to be paid by the mediator. The agricultural industry has consistently taken an obstructionist stance towards employees' efforts to organize, and this company, Garawan Farms, is currently using some of the worst union-busting tactics in the books. The company has also employed right-wing groups like Grover Norquist Center for Worker Freedom to launch a media campaign on behalf of Garawan Farms. These groups, funded in part by the Koch brothers, seek to use Garawan Farms' example against employee organizing as a template for future fights against labor. This labor struggle is happening here in California in 2015, and it's a struggle that is much bigger than the fight to achieve UFW representation for these employees. I therefore ask you for your support of this resolution, calling for Garawan Farms to accept and implement the terms of the UFW contract, to stop creating a hostile working environment for these workers, and to respect the right to fair compensation and equitable treatment of these workers. The next item that I have is an in memoriam, and I want to thank Supervisor Wiener, who's joining me in co-sponsoring this in memoriam, and that's a memoriam for Cookie Doe, also known as Edward Robert Bell. I know that it's been a very difficult time for people in the LGBT community because of the unexpected passing of Cookie Doe. Edward Bell, known as by his drag name Cookie Doe, passed last Thursday at the young age of 51 years old of complications from meningitis. Cookie Doe had been in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico for a 2-week tour of his drag satire, The Golden Girls Live. When he went to Mexico, Cookie Doe became suddenly ill. And an incredible outpouring of financial support and donations from the community enabled Cookie Doe to be flown back to San Francisco. And I want to acknowledge and think about his partner of 14 years, Michael Chu. Although he passed away soon after, Eddie Bell's huge community efforts show just how important a contribution he has made to San Francisco. A native San Franciscan, Eddie graduated from Balboa High School. He worked for many years as a nurse's aide at San Francisco General Hospital. But performance was always close to Eddie's heart. And starting as a light technician at Josie's Cabaret and Juice Joint, the pull of the stage was irresistible. Eventually, he introduced his alter ego, Cookie Doe, and for 15 years has been one of San Francisco's cultural treasures. His accomplishments are many. Longtime host of The Monster Show, 2010 Grand Duchess of San Francisco, named Best Drag Queen by the San Francisco Bay Guardian in 2009. Eddie starred in a series of short films in collaboration with his partner, which were played at film festivals throughout this country. He was also featured in the 2005 documentary Blood, Sweat, and Glitter that followed 4 performers preparing for Ms. Tranny Shack, including Eddie's close friend and upstairs neighbor, Stephen Grigelko, widely known as Heklina. Eddie was known for his warmth, his kindness, and genuine sense of humor. This gentle and authentic spirit shone out to all who knew him or who had seen his performance as Cookie Dough. Cookie Dough will definitely be missed. Donations are still being collected under the name Cookie Dough at GoFundMe. Cookie Dough's celebration of life will be held on Sunday, March 1st at the Victoria Theater, starting at 6 p.m. I have another in memoriam, and that's an in memoriam for an institution, a legend in the mission, Alfonso Texidor, a mainstay of the Mission District and an activist whose important work took his life from San Juan to New York and back, finally landing 30 years ago in San Francisco. Alfonso Texidor, known to many in San Francisco for his trademark brown fedora, cane, and elegant style, died of lung cancer on December 25th, 2014. He was born in Puerto Rico on August 2nd, 1946, and grew up in the barrio El Fanguito. He contracted polio from the standing water near his home and spent much of his childhood in the hospital undergoing treatment, but his spirit and will were unshakable. He became involved in the Puerto Rican pro-independence movement, and his passion never dimmed. Even as the University of Puerto Rico expelled him and 100 of other students for their activism, he continued to fight. He moved to New York and became involved with the Puerto Rican nationalist group Young Lords, as well as the anarchist group Up Against the Wall, and a name that I can't really say during this meeting, a group that liberated storefronts and gave out free clothes and food to the community. He protested the Vietnam War, police brutality, and involved himself fully in the resistance and countercultural revolutionary forces that were shaping our country in the 60s and 70s. Seeking a change, Alfonso moved to Portland and then San Francisco, where he lived for 30 years. He was active in the Haight-Ashbury, acting as coordinator of the Haight-Ashbury Music Workshop, and in 1978 he moved to the Mission District, where he kindled an interest in poetry. He gave readings at the farm on Potrero Avenue and also became active in community journalism. In the early 80s, he joined El Tecolote as a translator, and for many years he also wrote for the New Mission News. Alfonso continued to work at El Tecolote, editing the calendar and translating for that paper. He was at the office translating articles for the final El Tecolote of 2014, just 8 days before he died. His work and presence within the community will be deeply missed. A memorial for Alfonso is planned for February 8th, and it will begin at Café La Bohème at 12 p.m., and then we'll move to the Mission Cultural Center for Latino Arts at 3 p.m. More information can be found at the Facebook event page. And I apologize that I have a couple of other items still left. The next item is an item that my office and I have been working with Supervisor Jane Kim on, and I know that she will be speaking on this item as well. Last Wednesday, we had a tragic fire that occurred in a historic building at 22nd and Mission Street, and very shortly I will be making a commendation to a very heroic young man who was involved in that fire. The building was home to many families, businesses, and individuals that have been fixtures of this community for so many years. It's something that has truly shaken up this community. Fire crews arrived within minutes and rescued dozens of people from the 4-alarm fire. I want to thank the SFPD and the fire department for their tremendous work, because they were able to save dozens of families that were stuck on non-working fire escapes and other residents who took refuge from the smoke and flames in interior stairwells. I especially would like to thank our fire chief, her deputies, and the many brave firefighters who risked their lives on that day to save so many lives. Unfortunately, there was one person that passed away that they were not able to reach in time, and I will be doing an in memoriam shortly. This individual passed away, but for the amazing work of the fire department, I'm afraid that we would be talking about many more fatalities. The fire has had other dire consequences. 63 residents of the mission, including 15 children, some as young as 1 week old, are now homeless and living in a temporary Red Cross shelter. Other fires in the Tenderloin and Alamo Square have raised the number of residents displaced by fire last week to more than 130. These families were able to afford living in the Mission, one of the highest priced neighborhoods in the most expensive city in America, because of one reason: rent control. The Human Services Agency and our office are now attempting to find a couple of dozen of housing units, which in this market is almost impossible. We are looking for 6 studios, 2 one-bedrooms, 7 two-bedrooms, and 4 three-bedrooms to house these residents. We call upon this Board of Supervisors, the mayor, city agencies, local businesses, and the good people of San Francisco to help us find housing for these individuals. I know that this merciful city of San Francisco will rise to the occasion and find a place for these families. The 3 fires this week have also raised some very important and serious questions about what this city is doing to address preventable fires, to enforce existing fire and building codes, and to hold building owners accountable for the safety of our residents. In this building, we repeatedly heard from dozens of residents who noted that the fire alarms did not work. We repeatedly heard from residents who were having a tough time to find a fire exit that actually worked, and the fire extinguishers also were not in working conditions. Stories of broken fire alarms, unsafe living conditions point to the fact that something has to be done, and we have to ensure that the one fatality is not a death that happened in vain. So our office and the Office of Supervisor Kim right now are working on legislative options to deal with these issues, and we will be saying about more about that in the very near future. We actually will be holding a press conference with the families and the victims of these fires so that we can let San Francisco know of the tremendous need that's out there. But today, I will be calling, along with Supervisor Kim, for a hearing to review procedures and interdepartmental protocols for fire and building code inspections. There are a number of questions I have regarding code enforcement procedures that I would like to be addressed at the hearing by the Fire Department, the Department of Building Inspection, and the Department of Public Health. We need to do whatever is necessary to prevent another tragic death from happening. And finally, related to that note, I would like to do a final in memoriam in memory of Mauricio Orellana, who was the one victim that died in the fire at 22nd and Mission. I would like to take this time to honor Mauricio Orellana, who died tragically in this fire. Mauricio is described by all who knew him as a kind, friendly, and selfless individual. He was the type of friend and neighbor who helped make the Mission such a beautiful community. Mauricio grew up in El Salvador and moved to San Francisco 12 years ago to make a better life for himself as well as to help his family. He continued to provide financial support to his sisters and nephews in El Salvador throughout his entire life. He was also very involved in the church Primera Iglesia Bautista del Sur, where he was known to offer a helping hand to anyone who was ever in need. Friends have set up a GoFundMe site to help raise money to send Mauricio's body back to El Salvador. This site is called Help Us to Send Mauricio's Body to El Salvador. So the rest, I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. And to Supervisor Kim, I apologize. We're going to interrupt the roll call for the introduction of new business for the President to call the 2:30 commendation period.
Okay, colleagues, at this time, it's time for our 2:30 special recognition from supervisors. I understand Supervisor Yee, Marr, and Campos will be presenting commendations. We will go in that order, starting with Supervisor Yee, and I want to remind colleagues of Board Rule 4.13 that all 2:30 commendations should take no longer than 5 minutes each. So Supervisor Yee, we'll start with you.
Thank you, President Bree. Today, colleagues, I am honoring Richard Choi. Would you like to step up to the podium? The owner of S&E Cafe on 19th Avenue between Eola and Taraval. You're probably wondering why I'm honoring him as a restaurant owner when it's not a restaurant month. Well, Mr. Choi, I just want to say a few words about Mr. Choi, and I'll tell you why I'm doing this. Mr. Choi immigrated to the U.S. from Hong Kong in 1969 and has been working in the restaurant industry since 1998. He became the owner and operator of S&E Cafe in 2012. Back in November, I, with Supervisor Tang, were proud to help kick off a special program called CHAMPS at Mr. Choi's restaurant. And what does it mean? CHAMPS is an acronym for Choose Healthy Appetizing Meal Plan Solutions for Seniors. Now you know why they have acronyms for this. It's a new program allowing seniors to get nutritious meals at participating restaurants. And Mr. Choi's restaurant is the first restaurant to participate. In fact, I believe maybe the first and only right now. And CHAMPS, at D7, it's located in my district. The S&E Cafe serves not only D7 residents, but it really does serve seniors throughout San Francisco. And in fact, to date, the program has 1,800 seniors signed up for the program and has served 3,000 meals since November through this program. These meals are approved by dietitians and will allow seniors to select their choice of meals. So it's not just having one meal that they could eat from and that's all they could eat. I have mentioned on several occasions about seniors that become isolated and the problems associated with isolation. And when this, I felt, in fact, just yesterday, we opened the West Portal Playground Senior Center, the first services for seniors in decades. And actually, this is only a second program in District 7. And part of all this effort is to get seniors out of their homes as much as possible, get them back into the community so that they could continue to socialize. And the CHAMPS program does exactly that, because there are seniors that may need more help, and there are seniors that have nowhere to go, but there are seniors that really want to go somewhere, and not necessarily in a program's center where they might be seeing people that they don't know. This gives them an opportunity to meet with their neighbors at these restaurants and so forth. So I would say that one of the reasons why it's special to me is because back in my younger days when I had to run a summer food program for the Chinatown community for a lot of organizations, that's because nobody else wanted to do it. And this is sort of a realization. I know how difficult it is to do these type of programs, all the paperwork you have to do. In fact, what makes Mr. Choi so special is that the margin of profit on this is hardly a margin. I mean, there's really no profit. He's almost doing it out of his heart. So, and this is a partnership between Self-Help for the Elderly and the Department of Aging and Adult Services. So, Mr. Choi, thank you and your staff at S&E Cafe for participating in this program and help making it so successful. I mean, I don't know what you're going to do when all these thousands of people showing up every day. But before you say a few words, I would like to invite Andy Chung from Self-Help for the Elderly and Ann Hilton from the Department of Asian and Adult Services to say a few words, if you like.
Thank you.
I'm going to let them...
So Ann Hinton from the Department of Aging and Adult Services, and just to say that one of the reasons this is the only program like it in the city is because this is a hard program to get off the ground. We have many, many, many rules and regulations for our nutrition program sites, and so it's wonderful that this gentleman and his staff have really risen to the occasion on that. And we also want to thank Annie Chung because, frankly, without her leadership, and Supervisor Yees, I'm not sure just how far we might have gotten with this. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank Supervisor Yee and Richard and Ann for supporting this wonderful CHAMPS program. We brought along 5, 6 seniors who have all gone to SNE, and they said that it's wonderful that they could go anytime from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning. And they don't need to have one menu. They have several choices, and they could go anytime they like, any day they like, and they're not have to sign up the day before for a senior center meals program. So thank you to DAS for this wonderful pilot, and we hope that the Board of Supervisors in the future will support more innovative programs like this for our seniors.
Great. And Supervisor Tang, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. I'll try to keep this really brief, but I think that this program is a prime example of how our department thinks outside the box and doing something really creative to help serve our seniors. In District 4, we have the highest population of people who are 65 and older, and so for them to be able to sign up for this card and get this free meal at a restaurant and not have to feel like they have to go to a special place for a meal, but actually integrate as part of society, I think is incredible. So I want to thank Richard, thank Self-Help for the Elderly, thank Ann Hinton, and of course it is one of my favorite places to eat because it actually stays open late enough for me after I go home from work. So thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Yee. Next up, we have Supervisor Marr.
Thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, I'd like to ask if you could join me in recognizing an important environmental leader, Mr. Jack Colburn, who's a senior leader from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And I'd like to ask if Mr. Jack Colburn could come forward. He's here with his wife, Kathy, and his daughter, Caitlin. But we're also joined by the executive director of the Air District, Mr. Jack Broadbent, and from his executive staff as well, Rex Sanders and Maricela Martinez. The Air District is a 60-year-old entity for the whole Bay Area, and Supervisor John Avalos and I serve on it with the mayor's appointee, Roger Kim. And the 60-year organization's vision is to protect the public health, air quality, and the global climate, and to really advance healthy air for all in the San Francisco Bay Area. Mr. Jack Colburn has dedicated his life to advancing public health, clean air, and environmental protection. Throughout his career in public service, he's worked with organizations such as the Peace Corps, the United States, the U.S. State Department, and for 15 years, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency before joining the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. Until his recent retirement, he served as the Director of Communications, Outreach, and Incentives, and the Administrative Services Divisions for the Air District, from which he's retiring after a decade of distinguished service. I met Jack when I was a school board member in 2004, 2005, when Supervisor Kim and Supervisor Yee were also on the Board of Education. And Jack worked with us to ensure that San Francisco's schools became one of the first, I think, districts to have clean air buses to advance limiting children's exposure to harmful particulate matter and asthma issues. Jack was really great to work with then, as he has been for the past 10 years. During his time at the Air District, he's been instrumental also in providing the district's grants to community organizations and organizations in San Francisco that have reduced air pollution and emissions, and including developing alternative energy measures with the federal, state, and local businesses and organizations as well. He personally oversaw our Air District programs throughout the whole region that assisted in protecting and improving public health, air quality, and the global climate as well. He's an outstanding individual. It's been so great to work with him, and an amazing public servant. He assures me that he's going to continue his lifetime of service with many different organizations. And I wanted to ask if we could acknowledge Mr. Colburn for his great work. And I know that Kathy and Caitlin are here. Jack Broadbent, Maricela, and Rex, would you want to come forward too as we hear Jack's comments to our board? Please come forward if you can. So please join me in recognizing and giving applause to Mr. Jack Colburn for his service to our city and region. Jack?
Well, there goes. Good afternoon, supervisors. I just think my speech was given for me just now. Anyway, I think it was a great pleasure working in air pollution, serving the Air District, serving the city and county of San Francisco with the school bus program. I'd like to thank Mr. Broadbent for giving me the opportunity. I'm glad my wife and daughter are here. And everything else I was going to say was said. So, again, thank you very much. It's quite a privilege. This is 1 month since I've retired, and I'm looking for stuff to do. So, anyway, thank you all very much for your time. It's really an honor. Thank you. Is that good enough?
Thanks, you guys. Very good. Another really happy commendation. Some of you know that San Francisco is one of the amazing places where craft beer, the tradition in many ways began. And I know a number of my colleagues love San Francisco's craft breweries as much as I do. But this coming week, beginning on February 6th, begins San Francisco Beer Week in our city, and it runs through February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. And there's a number of people I wanted to call up to acknowledge this 7-year tradition in San Francisco. The first is Andrew and Jennifer Hall, who run an amazing place just down the street on Polk Street called the Beer Hall. But they're Richmond District residents, and they're a small business that's really thriving kind of in our corridor near City Hall, but they're also residents of the Richmond. Also, Ivan Hopkinson, the owner of one of our great local breweries, Barrelhead Brew House, that's on Fulton and Masonic, as one example of a local brewer. But I'd like to ask if Ivan can come forward. And lastly, it's Brian Steckschulte, who's the executive director of the 10-year-old San Francisco Brewers Guild that puts on our San Francisco Beer Week. But I also wanted to acknowledge Steve Shapiro, who's the associate editor for one of the national publications called Celebrator Beer News. But he also is the writer for beerbybart.com, which allows people to get to some of these great places to enjoy craft beer in our city by public transit. But I'd like to ask if the folks that I just mentioned can come forward. So we're celebrating San Francisco's Beer Week to promote the diversity of craft beer in the Bay Area since 2009. And it takes place each year in this second week of February. And the San Francisco Brewers Guild, which is 20 members, about 15 in our city, great brewers. They're holding a gala that's coming up this coming week with representatives from 24 of our states in the United States and 6 countries and about 2,500 people. In the past, over 500 different beer events to celebrate in our city have been held each year throughout the region, from breweries and brew pubs to restaurants, bars, and retail beverage stores. Events include Meet the Brewer opportunities, beer dinners, tastings, special beer releases, collaborative brews, lectures, and panel discussions. Also, open brew days, home brewing demonstrations, and beer festivals, and lots of great educational events that connect the local beer community with the broader world of artisan beer. In the Richmond District, I'll just say, as a Richmond District Supervisor, we're lucky to be in close proximity to many different places like SF Brewcraft that allows home brewers to make their own. Also, Healthy Spirits and different stores that really provide a great outlet for the variety of types of craft beers. And beer halls like Stein's and Richmond Republic, the recently opened place that's connected with Chomp and Swig, all on Clement Street in the Richmond District. These small businesses like the beer hall that are up here, they're really the entrepreneurs that, and the entrepreneurs that own them contribute to our vibrancy of our merchant corridors and our city, and they helped bond our communities by providing interesting and fun social venues to help foster an art form, beer, that stretches back thousands of years. And Steve Shapiro wanted me to acknowledge, too, that that Anchor Brewery is kind of one of the birthplaces of the craft brew tradition, and San Francisco being kind of ground zero for a lot of the great ones, and our Bay Area region as well. So with that, I'd like to ask if our different representatives would like to say a few words. So we have Brian Steck-Schulte from the SF Brewers Guild. Brian?
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Marr. It's an honor to accept this commendation alongside my colleagues in the industry, just a handful of who make this event possible. I'll turn it over to them.
Drink beer, but take public transportation.
And Andrew and Jennifer from the Beer Hall.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the recognition, Supervisor Marr. It's despite all of the challenges that it is to run a small business. I do remember being here almost 2 years ago at our hearing. It's an honor and a privilege to own and operate a small business in San Francisco. And especially be part of Beer Week and just be able to bring our community together and work in mid-market. Thanks.
And Andrew, did you want?
I let my wife speak for me.
And I just wanted to say that these folks here and the small businesses represent the best of SF Made and the pride of making it in San Francisco. But please support Beer Week. Can we have applause and a round of applause for these folks?
And I will add, only drink beer if you're the appropriate age to do so. Thank you very much. Okay, Supervisor Campos is our final commendation for today.
Thank you, Madam President. Cheers to the honorees. It is my honor and privilege to call upon a very special young man, Alessandro Gonzalez. I think he's here with his mom, and his dad, his grandmother, and I think that the rest of his family. Alessandro González, si puede venir con sus padres, su familia. And I also see our fire chief who is here. So, if Chief, if you can come up as well. Before I turn it over to Alessandro, I want to say a few words, and I want to give the chief an opportunity to say a few words as well. we have heard a lot about the fire at 22nd and Mission, and I have spoken about this just earlier in the meeting. We are here today to honor the heroism of a very special young man, Alessandro Gonzalez. Alessandro Gonzalez lives in District 9, and he displayed exceptional bravery and good judgment during the Turville Mission fire, which took place on January 28th. Alessandro, who is 13 years old, he is in the 7th grade at Edison Charter Academy. That day when the fire took place, and I remember, as you may remember, I noted that the fire alarms were not working. So a lot of people did not know that there was actually a fire. So Alessandro was home alone that day with his dog, Buddy. When the fire began, he heard loud voices outside, didn't really know what was going on, and then he had the good judgment of calling 911 immediately. When he called 911, he was told by the 911 operator that there was actually a fire in his building and that he should get out. Unfortunately, and this was not just in the experience for Alessandro, but for other residents of that building, he tried to open the window but could not get the window to open. So he had the bravery and the judgment to actually break the plane, and he climbed out of the window. And you have to know that this building is a 3-story building, and that all of the housing was actually on the 3rd floor where Alessandro was. He climbed down from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor. And carrying his dog, was able to actually jump to the rescue of other people, of the firefighters who were there to help him. I don't know, I've never been in a fire before, but as an adult, I can imagine that all of us would probably be scared and nervous and not really know what to do. So the fact that Alessandro showed the incredible character, the quick thinking, and the courage that he showed at the young age of 13 is really impressive. Not only was he calm under pressure, but he saved himself, and he also saved the life of his family dog, Buddy. I know that as a district supervisor, I'm very proud to call him a District 9 resident. His parents are here, and I have a certificate to give Alessandro. And the hope for Alessandro and his family is that very soon we will be able to find a home where they can actually permanently display this certificate. Before I turn it over to Alessandro, I do want to give our fire chief, who's here, an opportunity to say a few words. And Chief, I want to once again reiterate that I think that but for the tremendous work of your firefighters, that I think that we would be talking about more than one fatality. So, Chief, turn it over to you. I know you wanted to be here to honor Alessandro.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Breed, members of the supervisors. Thank you, in particular, Supervisor Campos, for acknowledging Alessandro. I look forward to working with you and your colleagues, Supervisor Kim, related to what we might be able to do, what you might be able to do legislatively related to making sure we have the most safe buildings, particularly residential structures in the United States. And I know we're meeting tomorrow on that very subject. Related to Alessandro, it is a pleasure to be here. In my book, you are a true hero, and I would love to have you consider a career in firefighting someday. What you did last week, I can tell you, showed extreme bravery, but also composure. You're 13 years old. You had incredible instincts, not only to get yourself and your dog out safely, but you alerted your fellow residents in that building. So we're all very proud of you. And I joined Supervisor Campos and the legislative body of government to say, great job, and you helped us save many lives. I would also like to add, there was a life lost, and I know you recognized the gentleman. We're in the business of saving lives, so it was very difficult for us. But we really appreciate all that you did that evening to save yourself, your dog, and your neighbors. And I have a special coin to give you, and as well as a San Francisco Fire Department T-shirt. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chief. So I now want to turn it over to Alessandro. I know that his parents are here. Just a few words in Spanish. Quisiera saludar a su padre, a su madre, a su abuela y el resto de la familia y felicitarlos por el heroísmo de su hijo. Yo sé que es un tiempo difícil para ustedes, pero estamos haciendo todo lo posible para ayudarlos. So with that, Alessandro, on behalf of the board, it is my honor to recognize you. The floor is yours. You want to say a few words?
First of all, I want to thank you because since the fire started, you've been there to help us. Secondly, I want to thank the firefighters and the cops because they save lives all day, and I think they should get a certificate for that too. Thirdly, I just want to thank the community who has been donating, whether it was clothes, money, or other stuff. Thank you so much because we need it. We really need it right now. And thank God because I got out. I still have somewhere to sleep. Maybe it's not stable, but I still have somewhere to sleep, and I still have food on my table and clothes on my back. So I really want to thank God and everybody. Thank you.
Take a picture, Chief. Come on.
Thank you again. It's my brother. Thank you.
Un placer,
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll walk out with you.
Thank you again, Alexandro. You are a true inspiration. Thank you for coming to the meeting today. Okay, colleagues, we are done with our commendations, and at this time, we have a 3 p.m. special order. So, Madam Clerk, can you please call items number 26 and 27? Oh, excuse me, item number 25 and 26.
Pursuant to a motion approved January 13th, 2015, contained in file number 141308, item 25 and 26 comprise the Board of Supervisors convening a committee of the whole for a public hearing to consider the proposed resolution to approve the disposition of land by the Office of Community Investment and Infrastructure as the successor agency to the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency under the Trans-Bay Redevelopment Plan for Trans-Bay Block 9.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and we have already addressed the item of whether or not the board should meet as the committee of the whole and take in public comment for such a matter. So at this time, to open up this hearing, I will call on Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, President Breed. Trans-Bay Block 9, which is before us today, will be the fourth block to be transferred for development pursuant to the cooperation agreement between the city, OCII, TJPA, and Caltrans, the state entity, to facilitate the funding of the Trans-Bay Terminal. The other Trans-Bay blocks which have transferred to date include Block 6, 7, and 11, including a number of affordable housing units. OCII has entered into a disposition and development agreement with the developer of Block 9, which provides for the sale of the parcel to the developer. The Block 9 development team, which includes TMG, Essex Property Trust, and for the affordable housing units, Bridge Housing, were competitively selected through an RFP process back in 2012. The board's approval of today's disposition under the state community redevelopment law is the final step before closing the land sale transaction for the week of February 9th. The sale proceeds of the property will go to the Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority for the purpose of funding the building of the Trans-Bay Transit Center. And we do have Pam Sims, who is with OCII, to present a brief overview of the project.
Good afternoon, Supervisors, President Breed. I'm Pam Sims. I'm a development specialist in the Office of Community Investment and Infrastructure, which is a successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency. So, pursuant to the redevelopment plan for the Trans-Bay Redevelopment Project area, the resolution before you requests the approval of the Board of Supervisors for the sale of the Trans-Bay Block 9 site. Specifically, the plan states the Board of Supervisors shall approve the sale or lease of any property acquired by the agency pursuant to the Trans-Bay Option Agreement in a manner consistent with the standards and procedures that govern the agency's disposition of property acquired with tax increment monies and that appear in Section 33433 of the California Community Redevelopment Law. So while the tax increment funding wasn't used to acquire the site, the 33433 process is still subject to the plan requirements, and the Board of Supervisors' approval is requested. Briefly, as Supervisor Kim stated, an RFP was issued in September 2012, and submittals were received in December 2012. A total of 3 proposals were received, and the team represented by TMG, Essex Portfolio, Bridge Housing, and the architectural firms of SOM and Fourgeron Architecture were selected. The purchase price for Block 9 is $43,630,000. The OCII Commission considered and approved the disposition and development agreement for this block in December 2014. Block 9 includes 545 total units, of which 436 are market rate and 109 will be affordable units. These units will be affordable to households earning up to 50% of area median income, or $48,550 for a 4-person household, or $43,700 for a 3-person household. Being subject to all of OCII's contracting policies, including the Small Business Enterprise, or SBE program, Block 9 has achieved 50.7% SBE participation, or $6.7 million in SBE participation. Of the total fees, 49.6% are San Francisco-based SBEs, 23.8% are minority business enterprise SBEs, and 12.3% are women business enterprise. During construction, OCII requires that the developer ensure equal opportunities for its construction workforce and sets a 50% San Francisco resident hiring goal. It's anticipated that construction will begin in July 2016 and will be completed in July 2019. Here with me today are sponsor representatives Charles Gibson and Kathy Greenwald from TMG Partners. Also here with me is Jeff White, Housing Program Manager, and Shane Hart, both from OCII. Also, I believe Tim Kelly from Kaiser Marston is also in attendance. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you at the groundbreaking, and that concludes staff's presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Kim. Okay, at this time, we will open the hearing up to public comment. If there are any members of the public who'd like to provide public comment on this hearing at this time, please come forward. Seeing none, public comment is closed. Okay, and we will move forward with item number 26. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll? Got it. Okay. Before we move forward, colleagues, I'd like to reopen public comment. Unfortunately, I did not see the individual who is coming forward, so we are going to open this hearing up to public comment.
Thank you, Tom Gilberti. When there's presentations in the chamber requiring blocks of land, it would be interesting to see in the chamber on the screen what we're talking about. You know, this object, yes, this subject, yes, and other ones too. So I would like in the presentation so that the people sitting here can actually see what we're talking about. I presume you're all much more familiar with what's going on. We're not. And I think a little bit of a visual presentation would be nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Larry Juicy Edmond, and commenting on item 25 about the land and the Transbay redevelopment, knowing that the redevelopment is no longer here anymore. As I attend the Reservoir Land City College at our Lick School, we need to use all the land in this city to make sure that 90% of the people at that reservoir at Balboa wanted housing for all people. 90% of the people of those 12 groups wanted housing right out at the Balboa Reservoir. That's because city have land trust there, and City College have a little of there. But it's important that you take this land trust and make it available for all people in this nation, because you know one thing, San Francisco, you have a history of removing people. And the land that we don't see anything on Market Street. Market Street is going up. We're having people who are arsonists. We have speculators. We know that every piece of land in this city, as the president said he was going to start working more with mayors and board of supervisors in the next 2 years at his State of Union message. And as president, I know you said we need to come here and say what's going on in San Francisco when it comes to land use. Actually, this is the greatest cruelty in America when you do not let people have housing. Our Statue of Liberty guarantees that. Give me your tithe and your urine. And when we do not take technology and build it up for people, then we are no better than the top up there. And I hope you would take this land trust, no matter where it's at, the Transbay Terminal, Fulton, or Balboa Reservoir, and know that it is time that people not be on the street in America. Homeless is not an American thing. First time I seen homeless, I was living in San Diego. It was the Man Troupe performing at Powell's Creek.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to comment on item number 25? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, President Bree. I just want to address questions from members of the public, and I appreciated the feedback. When we do have future development agreements that are coming before us, we still have actually Block 5 and 8, which will be coming before the board. If we can get a visual presentation so members of the public can see where the parcel is. And I think we take it for granted because we do see that before we come to the board meeting. But just to make clear, Block 9 is facing on Folsom Street and First Street. It is a corner parcel. It is somewhat, I don't know, kitty corner, but it's across the street from Block 11, which many of our residents will recognize as Renee Casaneva, which is 100% affordable housing units for formerly homeless. And I should reiterate to other comment, Transbay Redevelopment Area Plan, being that this is one that was supported by the state and is supporting a major transportation hub, actually set a higher mandate for affordable housing than our other redevelopment area plans. So we are mandated to build 35% affordable housing. That is a mandate by the state, which we are meeting and perhaps even maybe exceeding. But there will be significant affordable housing throughout Transbay. The one before us today is rental units for 50% of average median income. I'd mentioned Block 11, which is 100% for formerly homeless. And we will have also units coming up before us that will be for moderate income residents for home ownership opportunities. So we are looking at a wide range of affordability within the Transbay area plan.
Hey, thank you, Supervisor Kim. And so this hearing has been heard and is filed without objection at this time. And Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on item number 26?
On item 26, Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please go to roll call for introductions?
Back to roll call for the introduction of new business, although Supervisor Kim, you wanted to speak on the business introduced by Supervisor Campos.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Clerk. As Supervisor Campos had spoken in great detail about, we did have three major fires, residential fires, in San Francisco this past week, two of which were in District 9 and District 6, which I represent. Just wanted to alert members of the public in terms of what has occurred. In the Tenderloin, we did have a fire at 642 Hyde Street. 6 households were displaced, including one family with 3 young kids. I do really want to appreciate Supervisor Campos' office and the city for working together so quickly to mobilize to ensure that tenants had access to legal information and referrals to create their own individual recovery plans. I know that Supervisor Campos' office did arrange a meeting, and they invited our Tenderloin tenants as well to be able to meet with SFMTA, to meet with Department of Building Inspection, to meet with the fire department and other various entities at one meeting to get the information they needed, whether it was cars that had been towed because their car keys were in their units at the time the fire happened, down to even getting immigration papers and work permits if they lost that in the fire. It was really an incredible meeting last night, and I just want to acknowledge Supervisor Campos' office for putting that together. I've now had a chance to meet with residents from both of the fires, and it is absolutely critical that we do more. For example, I met a pediatric cancer ward nurse with 2 children who attend our public schools in the city, a construction worker who is helping to build the Transbay terminal, of which we were just talking about in the last item, an ESL teacher that teaches English to recent immigrants, and many others who have lost everything now and are struggling to find a way to recreate their homes and their lives. The city can and must do more to ensure that we don't have housing units taken offline any longer than is necessary. We've had a couple of major fires now in our district, and we found that there are varying times of which rehabilitation actually occurs. Sometimes it happens very quickly, and property owners are very diligent about getting the units back online and offering the legal right of return to tenants. And we've also seen cases where property owners have lagged on repairing their buildings, we think in hopes that tenants will go away and find other homes in the long term. We want to make sure that these natural disasters are not an opportunity for property owners to speculate and capitalize on this current market, and therefore losing current tenants to higher market rate tenants. So our office is exploring legislation that would both incentivize and or penalize the expedition of the repair in order to return homes that are damaged by natural disaster or accidents as quickly as possible to the tenants that have lived there. And we look forward to sharing the details of this legislation with colleagues soon, and certainly at the press conference on Thursday. And I just want to reiterate, because we've gotten emails from members of the public in terms of how they can help. The best way you can help is through financial donations versus donating used clothes and furniture. What the families and residents need is a very flexible and quick way to rebuild their lives, and they have very specific things that they need. And an example I'll give is some of our tenants lost their work tools that they need on the job. And so we want to be able to make sure that we are raising funds. There's a GoFundMe account that both Supervisor Campos and I have put on our Facebook website that you can look for, and we will soon be setting up a fund for the TL residents as well. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Christensen.
I'm introducing a resolution authorizing the Recreation and Park Department to apply for a housing-related parks grant from the California Department of Housing and Community Development in an amount not to exceed $3 million for the purposes of recreation and park facilities. The State of California Department of Housing and Community Development issued a notice of funding availability last December as part of its housing-related parks program. It's a formula grant based on the number of low-income units constructed between 2010 and 2014, with bonus dollars available for infill projects and those in disadvantaged and park-deficient communities, of which we have many. The Recreation and Park Department, the Mayor's Office of Housing, and the Planning Department are evaluating projects in the city that best meet the funding criteria, focusing on recreation facilities, including community centers. The Recreation and Park Department is seeking our approval via this resolution to apply for up to $3 million through the program. Grants of all types help enable and augment city projects, including many of the ones on which I've worked, and it's a delight to be able to find yet another source of potential income for valuable city projects. Thank you. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Christensen. Supervisor Cohen.
Good. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I'm introducing today a request for our budget legislative analysts to evaluate the Department of Human Resources process for filling funded vacant positions in our city department. I'm sure that many of you have been approached by departments every year in preparation of our budget process and asked to support additional positions or supplemental appropriation requests for urgent funding for key initiatives in our city, only to have those same department heads come back a year later and say they have not been able to hire to fill these vacant positions. I can't tell you how many times I've worked to secure funding for staff to oversee initiatives or programs that are important to the residents of District 10, and departments still take months and sometimes years to hire these vacancies. I believe that we've got a structural problem in our city in hiring employees. It simply shouldn't take months or a year to hire people to fill vacant positions that we've already allocated funding for. I'd like for the budget and legislative analysts to focus on a few areas of specific key areas of inquiry. First, the average time that it takes per department to fill an approved vacant position. Second, the number of approved budgeted positions that are currently vacant. Third, identify problem classification or departments where positions are not timely filled. Fourth, outline the steps DHR requires in filling positions and identifying efficiencies. Fifth, detail whether DHR has a methodology for prioritizing which positions are filled first, for example, public safety or positions authorized in a supplemental appropriation. And then the sixth and final point is I'm asking the budget and legislative analysts to identify if Department of Human Resources keeps track of ethnicity of employees and what classifications they are in to see if we are lacking in diversity in any of our key departments. This is something that I hear constantly from folks who have applied for positions that have either been denied or have heard nothing at all. The inability of departments to quickly and efficiently hire quality staff impedes really our ability to implement programs that benefit the residents of the city. And it also severely limits our ability to attract, promote, and then, of course, retain highly qualified workers. Madam Clerk, the rest I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, this past Thursday, our federal HUD Secretary Joaquin Castro and Governor Jerry Brown were in San Francisco to announce their intentions to establish a multi-family PACE pilot program in partnership with the MacArthur Foundation. This pilot program is going to enable financing for energy-efficient upgrades for certain multifamily properties, including specific properties within the HUD portfolio, California Department of Housing and Community Development, and the California Housing Finance Agency's portfolios. HUD Secretary Castro also announced the department will issue and clarify in the near term the circumstances under which HUD can approve PACE financing on HUD-assisted and insured housing in California. You may recall last year we introduced a resolution that I appreciate everyone's support here at the Board of Supervisors to relaunch our PACE financing program here in San Francisco. Should be up and running this March. And last Thursday's announcement was particularly encouraging because it was the first time since the recession hit in 2008 that a federal department was willing to sanction PACE programming and financing under certain circumstances. Today, I'm introducing a resolution, and I want to thank all the departments for working with me on this, urging a number of our city departments to pursue PACE financing for similarly energy-efficient upgrades to our current housing portfolio here in San Francisco for multifamily buildings, including the Mayor's Office of Housing, the San Francisco Housing Authority, the Department of Public Health, and Human Services agencies. Again, PACE is the financing mechanism that addresses the barriers to funding a lot of these energy efficient and green energy upgrades to homes. It was previously only addressing single-family homes, and now with this federal announcement, we can start looking towards multifamily properties here in San Francisco, in particular ones that support our supportive housing units here in San Francisco. I'm particularly encouraged of what last Thursday's announcement can mean for our low-income and vulnerable populations here in San Francisco housed in our publicly funded units. Once the details of the federal pilot are released, I want to make sure that our city is on record supporting the pilot, and we're doing everything in our power to pursue these upgrades for our San Francisco residents here in our own city. Again, I want to thank our respective departments already for working on this issue with me and getting prepared for the multifamily PACE rollout, and the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Kim, you submitted, correct? Okay, Supervisor Marr.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'd like to announce that this Thursday, February 5th at 6 p.m. at the Cliff House, I'm helping to facilitate with the National Park Service a discussion on the future of Ocean Beach, the tradition of Ocean Beach bonfires. This is an important meeting that we are asking community members, the National Park Service, our Recreation and Parks Department, and others to provide input, but also suggestions for how we can collectively support continuing of bonfires, but also as a city and National Park Service ensure that the environment is protected as well and that there's good maintenance and cleanup, but also public safety as well. Bonfires have provided free and accessible recreational activities enjoyed by generations of families and people in San Francisco, students, beach enthusiasts, surfers, and so many others. The tradition's been going on for over 125 years in our city. I think one of the key areas in my district is called Kelly's Cove, where surfers would gather, and it's basically a part of our San Francisco history, part of Ocean Beach history, and that's at Ocean Beach at the foot of Balboa and Cabrillo. The tradition of bonfires also has been allowed to continue by the National Park Service, concentrating an area for bonfire use that's close to the beach chalet at the foot of Fulton in an area that's just north of Lincoln Boulevard as well. And over the years, reasonable steps have been taken to mitigate the impacts of bonfires. When a number of bonfire pits were installed in 2007, they successfully moved the bonfires from along the beach to a concentrated area along Fulton Street at the Great Highway. Importantly, this kept fires away from environmentally sensitive areas like the Snowy Plover area and other areas that the National Park Service has been trying to protect, so that it's made also cleanups a lot easier to concentrate it in key areas. This is an example of a guideline that improves everyone's experience at Ocean Beach. Now, the National Park Service, though, which manages Ocean Beach, is considering new regulations following a pilot that they conducted earlier or last summer. And I strongly encourage everyone that uses and enjoys Ocean Beach to attend and share their thoughts and suggestions about how to best manage this treasured landmark. This Thursday, February 5th at 6 p.m. at the Cliff House, the National Park Service and I are hosting this meeting to gather input for future partnerships with the National Park Service. If you have questions, the National Park Service can be reached at 561-4700, or you can call my office at 554-7410. Also, some of you may have heard, and I know that Supervisor Kim has called for a hearing on the scandal and potential embezzlement of funds from a finance authority for nonprofits and a former employee of that FAN that's connected with the Association of Bay Area Governments. His name is Clark Howitt. And I've been a part of the Association of Bay Area Governments and would like to join Supervisor Kim in calling for a major hearing so that we can hear all the details. And I know there's litigation that's going on, so I've been, even though I'm on the Association of Bay Area Governments Administrative Committee, which met last night, I've been prevented from participating in different suggestions of settlements. But I know that from public comments from the Association of Bay Area Governments and the Finance Authority for Nonprofits that the full amount of the funds will be returned to San Francisco as soon as possible out of the Finance Authority for Nonprofits reserves, I believe. Also, my understanding is there will be some type of independent audit that the Association of Bay Area Governments will be strongly supporting as well. For facts, I think some of you know that this employee of the Finance Authority for Nonprofits may have embezzled approximately $1.3 million of funds that were supposed to be designated for the SOMA Stabilization Fund for infrastructure, streets, and parks in the South of Market neighborhood. Last night at the Administrative Committee of ABAG, a number of residents and leaders from South of Market testified. My hope is that with our hearing, but also the work within ABAG and the Finance Authority for Nonprofits, that San Francisco will be made whole, and especially the neighborhoods that really need the funds, the South of Market neighborhood as well. But I'll do my best to keep colleagues informed as I learn more information too from the independent audit and and ABAG and the Financial Authority for Nonprofits' own investigations as well. Thank you. The rest I'll submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Today, along with Supervisor Campos, I'm introducing legislation to create a Bill of Rights for LGBT residents of long-term care facilities in San Francisco. This legislation is groundbreaking, and it's the very first of its kind, and it will put protections in place for LGBT seniors who are living in these facilities where really they're particularly vulnerable because they rely on others for necessary care and services, may no longer enjoy the privacy of having their own home or even their own room, and may or may not have adult children or others who can really look out for them. The legislation will make it illegal in various ways to discriminate against residents in these facilities based on their sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, HIV status. Colleagues, as you'll recall, in 2012, Supervisor Campos, Supervisor Olagi, and I called for the creation of a task force to really analyze and report on issues facing San Francisco's aging LGBT population. We appointed as a board 15 people to serve on the LGBT Aging Task Force. Over the next 18 months, this task force performed amazing work, and they were asked to and did come up with a detailed plan about what the most pressing needs are for the estimated 25,000 older adults, LGBT older adults living in San Francisco. In March of 2014, the task force issued a report entitled LGBT Aging at the Golden Gate, San Francisco Policy Issues and Recommendations. The task force found that LGBT seniors face discrimination and mistreatment in long-term care facilities. Not all long-term care facilities. There are such facilities that do a terrific job with our LGBT community, but there are issues here and elsewhere. LGBT seniors are particularly vulnerable due to lifelong experiences of marginalization that place them at greater risk of isolation, homelessness, poverty, and premature institutionalization. As LGBT seniors enter long-term care facilities, staff at times lack the protocol for dealing with our seniors. While there are state laws mandating non-discrimination, there were not clear guidance in these state laws in terms of what long-term care facilities needed to do and avoid doing in order not to discriminate against LGBT seniors. And so we are, with this legislation today, providing that clarification in terms of enumerating what is required and what is not permissible. This is the first piece of legislation that is coming out of the recommendations of the task force, and there are some very, very exciting provisions. The legislation will amend the police code to prohibit discrimination against residents in long-term care facilities based on sexual orientation, gender identity, or HIV status. And more specifically, for example, it requires facilities to designate an LGBT liaison who undergoes appropriate periodic training. It requires facilities to respect residents' wishes to be addressed in the pronoun of their choice. It allows requests by two residents to share a room and forbids involuntary room reassignment as a result of one resident complaining about another resident's sexual orientation or gender identity. It requires access to appropriate medical care specific to an LGBT resident's needs. It requires that residents be allowed to use restrooms available to other residents of the same gender identity. There are other provisions, but these are some of the most prominent. In addition, the legislation will provide aggrieved persons with the right to seek investigation and mediation by the Human Rights Commission. In addition, HRC will be publishing a manual to assist facilities in complying with the new law. Third, the legislation will create a private right of action and civil penalties for violation of the legislation. This legislation, colleagues, is designed not only to protect our LGBT seniors who are residing in long-term care facilities, but to give them the tools that they need to advocate for themselves and their family members. Colleagues, I know that Supervisor Campos and I both look forward to a robust public discussion on this important topic, and I look forward to your support. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I want to say that last year, as you recall, the Board of Supervisors supported the policy of Vision Zero, and which is to end pedestrian fatalities by the year 2024. Today, colleagues, I would like to introduce an ordinance amending the Transportation Code to prohibit drivers of tour buses from narrating while driving. As you know, on October 23rd last year, we had a tragic accident in front of City Hall where Miss Priscilla Moretto was hit by a motorized tour vehicle and died from her injuries. And also seen 17 other pedestrian fatalities taking place last year in 2014. The total of 18 is a reduction from the year before, which had 21. So we're moving in the right direction. And this ordinance that I'd like to introduce is just going to be another tool to make sure that we get to our vision for 2024. As you know, distracted drivers driving by motorists poses a significant risk of injury to death to motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists. According to the California Traffic Safety Survey in 2013, 36% of Californians surveyed thought that talking while driving posed the biggest safety problems on California roadways. And nearly 70% of California drivers surveyed said that they had been hit or nearly hit by a driver who was talking or texting. A tour bus driver who is narrating a tour while driving is likely to be speaking to the bus passengers in mass during the vast majority of time during the tour. Further, the job of driving a tour bus is in important respects more complex than driving an automobile. Thus, the safety problems created by talking while driving are at the scene when a tour bus driver, in addition to attending to his or her driving responsibilities, is also providing narration to passengers. I have concluded that prohibiting narration by tour bus drivers in the city will reduce distracted driving and advance traffic safety by reducing the likelihood of collisions and injuries caused by distracted driving. So I would like to thank Supervisor Kim and Supervisor Avalos for co-sponsoring this ordinance, as well as Supervisor Cohen joining, and hope that colleagues, you will consider adding your name to this ordinance. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I just have one item for introduction. It's a hearing. It's a follow-up hearing on a hearing that I had done last year looking at nurse staffing levels and the hiring plan for nurses in the San Francisco General Trauma Emergency Center. Last year, I visited the center and I saw that many nurses were doing work above and beyond the call of duty, often working more than one job in their work because they were so understaffed, and many were working a lot of overtime hours. And when it really comes to ensuring safety of people who are facing trauma, having well-rested nurses is a big part of that. We had a hearing. We held the hearing in June during the budget process, and at that time we were told that there was a hiring plan in place, and that the Department of Public Health would be able to reduce what was a 1-year wait for someone applying for a job to receiving a job down to about 3 months. I'm hearing that wait has now been increased to almost a year again, and we want to look into whether that's actually the case or not, and have the Department of Public Health come forward with us and see how their plans are going forward for how they're going to be reducing the amount of time it takes to hire nurses. I know that we'll be starting our new general hospital building at the end of this year, and I'm concerned that building may impact the hiring of nurses, that we're getting distracted from the important role that we play in providing trauma services for San Franciscans. So I want to thank Supervisor Cohen for co-sponsoring this hearing with me, and the rest I'll submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Seeing no other names on the roster, that concludes the roll call for the introduction of new business. Madam President.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, can you please call public comment?
At this time, the public may comment generally for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, to include the minutes, items on the adoption without reference to committee calendar. Please note that public comment is not allowed on items which have already been subject to public comment at a board committee. Pursuant to Board Rule 4.22, please direct your remarks to the board as a whole and not to individual supervisors, nor to the audience. Speakers using translation or interpretive assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time, and if you would like to display a document on the overhead projector, please clearly state such to SFG TV and remove the document when the screen should return to live coverage of the meeting.
Thank you. So we are open for public comment. If there are any members of the public who'd like to provide public comment at this time, please line up to my left, and first speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. President Breed, that sounds good, President Breed. Congratulations. I just got 3 simple things I want to share. I had the opportunity to go out the other night on the homeless count. Some of the supervisors here, I'm Supervisor Farrell, Supervisor Kim, and some of the other supervisors there. And I've always wondered about that count. I always had a little suspicion about the numbers. And now that I've seen exactly how it was done, my numbers sure are different than your numbers. So I don't know how we're going to do this. Is this just, are we just out there? I mean, your numbers are nowhere near my numbers. So maybe sometime I'll be able to talk to some people about it. I'm on the local homeless coordinating board, so I do kind of have a dog in this race. So I'll be coming around to you guys to talk to you about that count. The second thing I want to talk about is you've done a wonderful job of eliminating the fare for low-income youth. You've recently done a great job on eliminating the muni fare for low-income seniors. But the people I represent is the low-income homeless, which is almost like an oxymoron. Where are we in that? You know, a lot of times we are able to get shelter beds for these folks. For example, if we get a shelter bed at Glide, and we request they go to Providence and the Bayview, they tend not to want to go because they have to fight the fare evasion system. So I want you guys to look into that, maybe make us the next group. Supervisor Cohen brought up some ideas of going to the city departments to find out which groups in the city are unrepresented in jobs. And actually all we got to do is walk around the government building and we can kind of figure out who's underrepresented. So I want to know, when you do get these figures of who is not, what are we going to do now? Because we've done this before, and we want to know what's the next step once we find out who is unrepresented in city.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please.
The last time I was here, I miserably failed in trying to explain something. So, not the last time, but last time. So let's try again. We'll put this up, if we may, and I'll expand that. How do we get this bigger? Can somebody help me here? I need some help. How do we get this bigger, Mrs. President? Thank
Sir,
you,
your time is ticking, and SFG TV will automatically
What's that,
zoom
sir?
it.
It's up on the screen already.
So, okay, so I have to turn this. Okay. Now, this is really frustrating. 1 minute and 18 seconds. Each one of these circles, my fingers are on, represents 70 years of time, the first being 70 years in the exile from when the temple was destroyed to the year 36, when the 70 weeks prophecy in Daniel ended. And it's strange that God says that there'll be 3.5 years more till Christ returns. Now, that's obviously a spiritual number. It's not real time, it's a spiritual number. And it can't be properly understood unless we really understand the 70 weeks prophecy in Daniel chapter 9, which gives us 69 sevens until Jesus would be baptized, and then Jesus is killed in the midst of the 70th 7-year cycle, which would have to have been, of course, the 487th year. Okay? So if you don't get that, you won't get the fact that it's very strange. This is exactly 11 jubilees and 3 sabbatical cycles, and yet if we multiply it by 3.5 years, we get 1960 years, which is 40 jubilees. There's no way that that is not God shouting at us, okay, that Jesus is coming soon.
Thank you. Your time is up. Next speaker, please.
I think I should quit.
Is this the speaker? Here. Hi, my name is Salah Hakuya Chandler, and I am the mother of Yalani Chinyamarimbe, who was assassinated on January the 9th, and just want to testify, get prepared to my son, who had called me and said that he was cashing his check on his half-an-hour lunch break from Benihana's Japanese restaurant in Japantown, and his colleague, they walked to Geary and Fillmore, and then they walked to Charlie's, and he saw one of his friends, and the check cashing place was closed, and asked for a ride from one of his friends that he was raised with in the Fillmore area, and got into a car and didn't know that the car was stolen, and someone said that it was, they paid $25 for it, and the next thing you knew, my son was executed with the 3 others in the car. I received a phone call from Sergeant Kevin Sanders, who said that my son wasn't in a gang, said he didn't have a criminal record, they had to use his thumbprint, said he didn't have a gun, and most of all, he had on his Benihana's work uniform, a pair of black slacks, a nice button-up shirt, and dress shoes. It was stated that my son was planning on going to school, and San Francisco City College, the STAR Project, Vanessa, made it be known to KRON that my son was in school. He was in the STAR Project with Willie Brown. That was his mentor. And here's a picture of it to show forth that my son was very, very brilliant. Here's the pictures here. And that's Willie Brown's. There's his daughter, my son. He is Willie Brown. That he was with Willie Brown that day, and here's the picture of Willie Brown himself concerning my son. And this is a state of emergency. We're requesting that
Ms. Sala, your time is up,
Yes,
and we can only provide 2 minutes, so if the next speaker can finish.
Yes, go ahead. Continue.
Thank
We are requesting for a state of emergency in the city and county of San Francisco.
We have to move to the next speaker. I apologize, but we can't do it that way. Anyone else is welcome to make comments.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is LaRon Mayfield, and I'm from the Fillmore community, and I've been going through the same problems, almost 15, 17 years. I've been going through this stuff with these murders. I've been to over 40-something funerals, and I lost many, many, many friends, family. And this is a big one right here. We lost 4 youth, African-American boys to gun violence. And this is something that happens in third world countries. People getting slaughtered in their cars like this. And we need you guys to come together so we can get a solution for our children from getting murdered. They've been murdered, they're getting slaughtered in these San Francisco streets. These children don't have a chance. They barely can get a job out here. It's hard for them. I done seen a lot of these youngsters try to get jobs and put applications, and it's hard. Some might have felonies on their record, and everybody turn their back on them. So we need you guys to come and make a solution for our youngsters, for our youth, because our percentage of black people was not that much in San Francisco. We're a small percentage, and we're losing out big. This is our future. This could be the next supervisor, the next mayor that's getting killed in these streets. Like she said, Yolani was a working young boy. He was working at Benihana's, and he got slaughtered. It's a wasteful of life. So we need you guys to come and put something together for our youth. All these houses and all this other stuff, man, it's about life right now. And we need somebody to stand up for our people, for our children. Because I've been to 40-something funerals. And I guarantee you somebody in the Army ain't lost that many people in the Army. They ain't lost that many people in the Army. And we lost all these many people. I'm just saying, do something for our people.
Thank you, LaRon. Next speaker, please.
Yes, my name is Kareem Mayfield. LaRon Mayfield is my brother. As he spoke, we grew up and seen a whole lot coming up in the Fillmore district. I mean, on the outside looking in, Fillmore is a great place, and I mean, which it is. It gave me a lot of essence. But overall, seeing these murders, happen daily and every other week it's ludicrous. And dealing with how great of a city, metropolitan city that San Francisco is, and how big it is, and how many resources come through San Francisco, and just the Bay Area overall, it's ridiculous. And as my brother stated, these youngsters, they may get felonies at 18. And, a lot of times things happen as youngsters, and we mature. I was a young guy at one point, and I've matured to become the man I am now. But with that being said, if the Creator didn't have mercy on all ourselves, where would we be? And with that being said, these youngsters may get a felony and then they're written off. They're written off, and a lot of them has changed their mind or changed their attitude, and but the system hasn't changed, or we're not accepting them anymore, or they're looked down on. And all we can do is do our part, without a budget. But as I stated before, that it's a lot in San Francisco, and that goes on, and it's a lot that can be hand over to the youngsters and hand over to the young adults, and a lot of programs. And as I knew Yolani, he was a family member of mine. This is a very tragic event to see someone innocent go down this way. And Sala, Yolani's mother, has been an advocate and outreach person for 30 years now, before her son got involved in any of this. So we're here not just for one person, we're here for life overall. We're not here for the deaths of, we're here for life for the ones that live now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Princess Khadija Jacob Fambro, and I'm running for president 2016, and I'm begging and I'm asking and pleading and praying that the world will hear our cry. Our children are being murdered. There's rapes, there's robberies, there's chaos in the streets. Our children, body parts are being stolen, taken out of our children. These murders are happening from the top. We have to address it from the top, and we need our cry to be heard. I'm here, these moms, we're out here, we're doing the best that we can with our children. These children are innocent, and we just want everybody to hear it. Princess for President 2016, and I'm here on behalf of my sister, Sala. Thank you.
Thank you. And next speaker, please.
It's not showing any of the pictures. Are we doing something wrong?
Okay, we'll work with SF.gov TV to get it up. Next speaker, please.
Yes, I think it's very important that City of San Francisco, City and County of San Francisco calls for a state of an emergency, and actually, as a leader in the country, a state of emergency. This is 1.8% of population in America. Is 32% of the homicides. That is a statistic that is skewed beyond belief. We need to come to the table with intent to stop this, and it could start in San Francisco with a state of an emergency that says that we no longer tolerate these homicides of young African American males. This is all part of a global white supremacy operation that we need to address, and we need to deal with. Perhaps start with intention. Just bring your heart to the table, intend to stop it, and that will be a good beginning.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Takia Chandler. I'm the sister and friend and family members of a lot of these brothers dying in the community. I just wanted to play this.
Because I guess she's been listening to the news and everything.
Yeah.
That she can't really focus too much on that or pay too much attention because, as we all know, the news media get their story from, I don't know where.
He say, she say, basically.
Exactly. Okay. So what I will say is that your brother, and I told your mom, that your brother is not gang related. He has no criminal record. And we know that from doing our work, that he was a good person, okay, and that he had just left from work, and I guess he called one of his friends for a ride.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was to go home or to cash a check, but he got a ride from one of his friends, and he ended up in a bad situation that was beyond his control.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I told your mom that, and I told her that I didn't want her to think that her son was lying to her because, this is what we got out of the investigation since Friday night.
Okay, and may I ask your name?
Sure. Kelvin, Kelvin.
Sanders, okay. There was rumors, so I just had to make sure because I know my brother wouldn't carry a gun, so I'm glad he didn't have a gun on him.
No, he didn't have a gun on him.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Yeah, hello to the board. I'm King John from United Players. I'm just trying to, be out here, 47 years of my life. I've been to more funerals than graduation. And these gun violence out here are getting out of hand. These mothers are losing their babies. I have 3 grown ones, but I don't know how I feel to lose one, but I know it hurts. And it ain't no justice out here, it's just us. United Players, we try to make the justice right out here and watch over the babies. But with the police killing the babies off, the youngsters killing each other off one by one, it needs to be some help out here. And if there ain't no help out here, there's nothing out here, So there ain't no justice, it's just us. Because, man, already it's like the new year. This is the 3rd day of February. It's like been 10 about 10 of our kids getting killed already. And the new year just started, and that's ridiculous, you know what I'm saying? And something needs to be done about it. All these gun violence and all these kids out here getting killed, ladies and babies and everything is wrong, it ain't right. And somebody need to be held responsible for it or do something about it. And man, United Players, we try to do what we could do, but we ain't getting no help out here. So man, what can we do about it? Just asking for y'all help and see what can be done by all these guns on these streets and get them off so these kids can have an education and grow up and be somebody. Because if not, they just getting killed off one by one.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Oh, hello. Hi, I'm Princess Junior here on behalf of my mom, Princess for President 2016.
I'm sorry, we can't do any political campaigning, so
sorry.
thank you.
And we need, Obama to declare a state of emergency on this because it's crazy. Like, they're sweeping it under the rug, like the black kids getting killed don't matter because it's not pertaining to them. But when you're a family member and you're friends of the black people getting killed, it's a lot, more serious. So we just need something to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. I came here today because that boy, Salas boy, and most of these kids, I know them, but there need to be a major investigation in all these killing of black people in San Francisco, in spite of the fact that they want blacks out of San Francisco. The city of San Francisco has developed a hate for black people, and it appears to be like that. I'm sure that when they were exterminating Jews, they had these same type of conversation, and people like y'all sit around and act like it's just something that happened. This ain't something that's just happening. This is a plan. It's bigger than that. And you don't want to do nothing about it. We need to have a major investigation of why black people can't work out at Candlestick Park, where they're building in Double Rock, where they're building in West Point. Only thing they got is 2 or 3 blacks flagging. All of this is madness. And all I'm saying to all of you as supervisors, you are as guilty as the murderer if you don't look into this thing, because there are more people involved in these murders than you got any idea. It's way deeper than you think it is.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please. There's a line to the left if you'd like to provide public comment.
Hi, my name Vladimir Prikupets. I am 83 years old, Holocaust survivor, and I was like a dog pushed on the street by San Francisco police and by Mayor Lee and by Obama. It's fascism. United States is the worst country about fascism in the world right now. This is not only my word. This is word who said Oprah on one of her. I carried. I have 4 proclamations from Mayor Newsom, Mayor Lee, and from you Board of Supervisors, 2 proclamations. I carried 4 Olympic torches for United States. For 4 Olympic Games, I carried 4 Olympic torches, and I was a year on the street, homeless, 83 years old, homeless. Who is from your parents would be on the street at 83 years old and sleeping under the car or in some places and go to pee in this and eat people and homeless eat from the garbage can and drink from the garbage can. What country is this? This is fascist country. Yes, only Germany did it with concentration camp. Only. Again, and I can't find the truth. I can't find the truth in American court. Why? Because I am poor. In the United States, you have only should be rich to get something. What I ask only to return me to my place where I stay. But no, it's not united.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Supervisors. My name is Danique Johnson, and I'm here in representation of the San Francisco Black and Brown Alliance, and I want to talk about all the gun violence that is happening. I stand here as an advocate for my own community and the mother of 4 young adult children, and how I constantly am living in fear and afraid when I hear gunshots and sirens. I haven't been personally affected by the gunshot, a victim of a homicide, but I am affected because I know these young men. I watch them grow up, and I feel like nothing's being done. I'm tired of going to funerals. I'm tired of seeing my friends cry, and I worry about who's going to take care of us. The whole generation is being wiped out, and I think it needs to be looked at, and there needs to be more intervention implemented to stop all the violence in the streets. They're also just pushing these young black males under the rug. They have nothing else to look forward to. They go home, they have problems at home, they try to get a job, and they're being hit with gang injunctions and being denied a job because of their criminal history. They have to walk out the house and look, watch their back. They're being profiled and harassed by the police on a daily basis. So what else do they have to look forward to? Try to give them something, empower them economically and, spiritually. Try. It's just like a lost race. And they act like, it doesn't affect anyone. It affects me to have to go to so many funerals. It affects me to see these young black males dying so young. And I have 3 sons in those age ranges, the most at risk, 13 to 25. I have 3 sons of that age. And how do I feel? How do I feel having to look at young black males and saying, am I going to have to go to their funeral?
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Madam President, and the rest of you supervisors, acknowledging all of you. I'm very tired, so I'll try to go real quick. My name is Carolyn Richardson Alexander. I'm an activist, I'm an organizer, I'm a civic organizer, and I'm a mother, an auntie, a wife, and I'm a real woman. And it takes all those qualities to be what we are when we want to stand up for something. But I've been living here in San Francisco since 1960. I left when the earthquake started, and I came back when the earthquake was over. It was due to health reasons. And I am just torn to pieces inside for who I am, Carolyn. It just tears me up when I continue the hearing that these young people are killing each other and taking each other out. I have a strong message, and I want to work out a partnership with you all. And so if we put together a task force for the Black and Brown organization of the Alliance, and we can match your task force that you guys have put together, and if we can come together with you guys and learn to work with you guys, and you all learn from us as the community, I strongly feel that that would be a good balance. I'm willing to do it over here on this side, and if you guys are willing to get together and work with us as a task force from the community, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Larry Edmond, and you can Google me at Edmond Juicy, 45sfwp@gmail. Look, today we know that this young man whose name means Mighty Born. And I myself have been here 25 years. We hear people talk about the Bayview, the Western Addition, OMI. I live in the TL. And today you're talking about LGBT Bill of Rights. We're talking about a lot of your districts, no gun violence a problem. And we have an arsenal. I want you to see this here right here. This is what somebody went in my room on Sunday before Christmas and burned a container in my room. I want to get it to the fire department. I was moved out 25 days later and moved back in the room. We know in San Francisco, no matter where you at, if you walking or you living black in San Francisco, you are going to have some challenges. Even though I can go to Castro and be happily, but when I come back down Cross Market in Tenderloin, it's a problem there, Jane, in our District 6. We do not have the adequate justice all over this city. And I always tell people, whatever they do to people in District 6, they're going to do it to people in other districts. And it is time that we have people of color, like Mayor Willie Brown. You know what? February 11 would be a year of the bridge named after him on his mother's birthday. It's important that this young man who talked with Mayor Brown, he was very intelligent with Mayor Brown, to know that so many of our role models in this city are not getting the opportunity to make this a better city. You know, we have no blacks, Holly, in San Francisco. Hope you come out and enjoy the Black History Month, because we have to enjoy what you all really let us have since Jonestown. You know, that took a lot of people away.
Thank you, Juicy. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Vanessa Banks. I'm a native of the Bayview Hunters Point community of 45 years. So I have experienced a lot. I have seen over, he said 40, I'm going to say over 300 people of my peers, and now it's our friends, children, and everything. I know it's things that we need to do for ourselves to help our own children understand that violence is not the answer. But as we would like to move forward, we would try to get together a letter to the mayor to let him know we are calling a state of emergency and we do need some type of help. But I also would like to address that I heard over a few days in the community that Violence Prevention funds has been allocated to the mission in the South of Market. That is unacceptable. What about the Bayview Hunters Point district as well as the Fillmore? It's like money should be allocated to all pockets of the city, not just different areas. That's unacceptable. I don't understand that, but I will work through it with you guys if I have to meet with you individually to ask what can we do to change that. Then I will also like to say to the supervisor that mentioned the parks. I'm friends of Youngblood Coleman Park. I'm trying very hard to do violence intervention in the community, but I can't do it by myself. I need the city to know I am trying very hard to open back up the park. So that is one park that have not been touched since Mayor Dianne Feinstein allocated it to the Bayview. We still have sand in the park. From my understanding, there's no city parks that is even having sand. So when you get ready to talk about that $3 million with the mayor's Office of Housing and Park and Rec, please don't forget about Youngblood Coleman, because we is trying to save our own lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors, honorable supervisors. My name is Linda Cutts, and I'm the central abbess of the San Francisco Zen Center. The San Francisco Zen Center is a meditation center and Zen Buddhist religious organization that's been in San Francisco over 50 years, and we're located, for those of you who may not know, on the corner of Page and Laguna. And just, feels like yesterday, but just a couple of weeks ago, 4 young African-American young men were killed on our corner, right across the street, right in our neighborhood, in a most shocking and horrible way. And this tragic, violent occurrence has galvanized a number of people to take more responsibility for joining with the neighborhood people who are being active and joining the Black and Brown Alliance, Organization of Alliance, to help our beloved San Francisco, which is being affected so strongly by these senseless, violent, unspeakably tragic murders and all the suffering that flows from them, the really unfathomable inconceivable grief that I witnessed, and that is, as one of the therapists said, persistent, not just post-traumatic stress disorder, but persistent traumatic stress disorder that affects families and communities for years to come. So the task...
Thank you, ma'am. Your time is up at this time. Thank you for coming. Next speaker, please.
Thank you and good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Lydia Linker. I am also a resident of the San Francisco Zen Center, as well as a staff member and employee. And the incident that Linda Ruth and many people here have talked about earlier this month or earlier in January has been affected more than just the Black community. It's affected our entire city and all our community. And I am here as a representative of the San Francisco Zen Center, as well as a representative of the San Francisco Black and Brown Alliance. And I would like to support the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force as a neighbor and a friend and a resident of San Francisco. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm going to change up pace a little bit. My name's Jason Pape. I'm a resident of North Beach, and I'm here to speak in regards to the home sharing legislation that you guys are that we're currently working on. And I'm just really here to support home sharers, those of us using the Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway platforms, etc., to create a income and an ability for us to live our lives and afford our lives here in San Francisco. As we all know, for many, many years, it's been a huge issue, the affordability of housing in the city, and we feel like we're being unfairly scapegoated. The issue, and labeled as a cause or a negative effect of the problem that's existing. So I'm urging you guys to please just look more comprehensively into the effects, the benefits. Right now, there's provisions in the legislation that really restrict people who are in BMR or low rent buildings, etc. And the caps that you guys have also placed on other people, and how this whole registration process that we just started at the beginning of the month. We really need to work on something that meets in the middle. Right now, it's still a little too one-sided, and it's what we need to do is we need to make this legislation and something that's we need to encourage people to look into the benefits and the practices of home sharing, because I don't think everyone fully understands it, and that's what I'm just here to represent. And my condolences to everyone here for this youngster Yolani, because that is a very serious issue as well. I don't mean to get off topic, but I totally believe in everything.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, community, and thank you, supervisors. My name is Ray Balbaran, and I just want to say a few things. We're a beautiful community. We're a strong community. We're a loving and caring community. Our children are sacred. We love God. God definitely loves us because He looks like us, right? So I just want to say a few things about the. I guess it's a task force, a gun violence task force.
Unfortunately, because it was on the agenda, you can't provide any comment for that particular item, but you can talk about gun violence in general.
Well, I would like to talk in general, but towards that a little bit. I hope that that we develop programs and task force and committees that represent the community. Is that better?
Yes.
To represent the community, and that there be poor people on these committees and talk for the community. I also hope that it's not business as usual, and these committees really just represent the departments, that just, they not want to interact with the community. I also hope that these committees that we put together is going to break down barriers for the community can get resources to do their own business. You know what I'm trying to say? I think part of any work with city and the community is to help empower the community to develop their dreams and their aspirations. I believe that we'll work with any community or group to make this happen with them. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Supervisors, Daniel, for the record, I'm here to represent the San Francisco Black and Brown Organizations in Alliance, and I want to make it very clear that this organization is taking a bold and a step towards resolving issues in our community, but we also recognize that you cannot solve the issues of homicides without the police department being held accountable. So on one of the committees I sit, my job and our job is to make sure that the police department is being held accountable. We can no longer treat this as a one-way street and say the community need to come forth, but you have officers who don't come forth on each other, and we all know the reports, whether it's the Perf report, whether it's the out-migration report, that this city have studied everything to death, literally. So the studying needs to go, and we need some real concrete action. Now, the one thing that we talked about last night in our community meeting is that the Justice Department needs to investigate the San Francisco Police Department. And you as supervisors need to say you with that or against that. Now, if you're against that, after we come visit you and meet with you one-on-one, then make it clear to everybody in San Francisco you're against that and why. And if you can take that bold step, then we can take a bold step and recall any supervisor that would stand against all the people of San Francisco for these unsolved murders going all the way back to the 80s. Let's be clear. You have plenty of organizations locally, statewide, and nationwide, and even worldwide that can step in and solve all of this. That's right. So we're not here to pussyfoot around, excuse my language. And I'm angry as hell at Mayor Lee because he don't speak up for our community, but when birds is dying in the damn bay, we have the nerve to have people parachuting in from...
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Ace Washington. I know I got 2 minutes, but I'm going to dedicate something to the grieved people. But I'm just 1 minute. The brother right there spoke with words of wisdom, particularly to our black African-American supervisors. Be on notice. This is Black History Month. Without a doubt, we are into that. But anyway, I just wanted to say here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm heartbroken. But I'm very glad to see some of our constituents out here, African-American, black, Negro, however you want to put us. We are in a state of emergency. We got to think outside the box. Everything else, throw away. All the things you've done in the past, they didn't work. I'm looking at the timer because I got 1 minute. But I'm here in support of them. One of the young men that was killed, and I knew him before he was born. I know his mother. She's a worker. I'm in tears right now. I just can't understand what the hell is going on in this city. Anyway, mother, there's too many of you crying. And brother, there's far too many of you dying. You know we got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Look at here. Picket lines and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Come on and talk to me so you can see what's going on. What's going on? What's going on? Tell me what's going on. And then Marvin Gaye did a song after that. He want to know what's happening. That's why I come in. I want to know what's happening. I've been gone a long, long time. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm back on the case.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Next speaker, please.
My name is Nancy Nielsen. I live in the Bayview district where many of these people live. I've lived there since 1984, and I came to speak about home sharing. But first I must say that I agree with all of these speakers that there's an epidemic of murdering and killing our African American, Latino, and poor young people in America, and we need to stop it. My house has been open for home sharing ever since I moved in. I belong to an international organization of travelers, and I have people from all over the world come to my house for 2 or 3 nights since I moved there. With the Airbnb, I've had enough income to pay my mortgage most of the time. If I don't have paying customers at my house, I'm going to go into foreclosure. That's why I would request that you continue this program of home sharing that you approved of so that everyone can benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Francis Collins. I sing for the Veterans for Peace and involved in veterans issues. I also am an activist in the housing rights. I'm here as a representative of the San Francisco Black and Brown Organization Alliance and a concerned citizen of San Francisco. Our city is in a state of emergency with the recent violent deaths of 13 young men of color and a 32-year-old mother of 3 who was shot and killed while getting her mail from her mailbox. It is for these reasons that I strongly recommend the task force introduced by Supervisor Malaya Cohen, District 10, where the majority of the shootings...
Sir, you can't comment on the task force at this time. I'm sorry.
Okay, homicides have occurred, that this task force be filled with memories of the community. And
Sir,
not
I'm
just
sorry,
city
you can't
employees.
comment on the task force.
Okay.
Sorry. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Madam President and Board of Supervisors. My name is Pastor Eris Edgerly from the Western Addition. I'm just here as a member of the San Francisco Black and Brown Organization Alliance. We're aligning our communities. We have young men, young women that are dying in the streets from Bayview Hunters Point, the Western Addition, the Tenderloin. We got the Western Addition. It's touched everybody. Lakeview, OMI, is completely wiped out of black folks, period. Everybody's ended up in the Tenderloin, and we're getting pushed out of the Tenderloin. The SROs are filled with becoming empty. I mean, we sit right next door to the Marina District, right over the hill. You know, so we just thank you for hearing us as an organization that we're pulling together. It's not about individualizing, it's about all of us coming together, just like we got all of you supervisors together. We're all coming together as organizations, as people of color, to stand for righteousness and injustice. But we need help. We need a city and county of San Francisco to finally include the community. Finally include the community, because I don't know if everybody knows, but the Western Addition was the first redevelopment act of wiping out the African American community. And we're still, as a community, not represented. So finally, if we can band together with this violence, because we know all this stuff came from economics and redevelopment wiped it out. So if we could just come together somehow and make this organization alliance with our city and county, that's what we want to do.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Sue Vaughn. I'm the chair of the SF group of the Sierra Club, but I'm here speaking on my own. Supervisors, a Pandora's box of problems for Muni and other public transit agencies statewide could be opened unless we all act fast. A Republican assemblyman from Southern California has introduced a bill, AB 61, to amend the state vehicle code 22500.5, which prohibits all but common carriers, Muni, and other public transportation agencies, buses, from operating in public bus stops. This bill, quite simply, is an attempt to circumvent environmental review and to kill a CEQA lawsuit now underway that seeks to require the tech companies now illegally using our bus stops to operate legally and to mitigate for their impacts. I remind you, Apple's fourth quarter profits last year were greater than those of oil extraction companies, and Google and Facebook and other tech companies are similarly wealthy. An environmental review would assess the impacts of these buses from everything ranging from safety, pedestrian safety and bicycle safety, and infrastructure impacts, to evictions and hyperinflation of housing prices. These companies can afford to mitigate for their impacts. Why is a Republican assemblyman from Southern California introducing legislation to privatize our bus stops? You should all look into it. I am. I'm requesting public records to find out, to get to the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paulette Brown, and I'd like to use the overhead. I'm here concerning my son, Aubrey Abracasa. I'm not here to bash anyone. You know, I'm an advocate. I'm out there all the time trying to bring justice for my child and for other children. We run an organization called the Healing Circle for the Soul Support Group, and I just wanted to say that about all the unsolved murders, including my son's case is still is a closed case. It's not closed, but it's not solved. And I'm concerned about that as a mother. It's been 8 years since my son was murdered, you know, and I'm taking responsibility as a parent, you know, as I was, you know, I would say if my son had been out there causing problems, there's no way I would have watched my son die. There's no way I would watch my son go out and shoot someone else. Sometimes the parents got to take responsibility and tell on their children if they're doing something wrong. And this snitch culture that's going on, it needs to stop. We need to open our mouths because our silence is killing our children. And we need to do something about that. I carry my pictures with me, and you know, these are still all unsolved murders of these young men that have been going on for years, and all these cases are unsolved, including my son's. And I also have a picture. I tell people they don't want to stand over their son's casket. This is all I have to remember my son. This is all I have to remember my son. And the next thing that keeps me fighting is my son laying on a gurney, dead. 30 rounds of bullets left that gun into my son. So this is for me to remember for the rest of my life. And I'm willing to get out there and stand and help anybody. You know, that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, President and Supervisor London Breed and members of the board. I just want to say thank you, Supervisor Breed and other board members who have been on the front line of this issue, including our chief, Greg Sir, who has been with us since the beginning of these homicides that have taken place. My name is Maddie Scott. I'm the Executive Director for Healing for Our Families in Our Nation, President for the Brady Campaign, San Francisco chapter, and the Mothers in Charge chapter leader. I'm very angry that to the city's response to these homicides that have recently plagued our whole city. It has affected everybody here in San Francisco. As a mother who lost a son 17 years ago, just brings back memories for me and my family and the community, and for 13 young men of color, where the majority of these deaths happen in District 10 and in the Fillmore District. We should be outraged. We should be outraged and angry that this has occurred in our city of hearts. a city that represents hearts, while all of our hearts are broken here in the city because of this recent rise of homicide and violence. We can do better. We elected you all to support us on a journey to have a safer and better San Francisco. The mayor's response to this is an atrocity. He has not reached out to anyone or said anything about these homicides or even said anything in sympathy toward the families. We will take this to Kamala Harris, our Attorney General, if we have to. We're urging everybody to write a letter to her regarding the recent homicide in the city of people of color. This is ridiculous. We're tired of it. We're not going to sit down on it. We're going to take it all the way to the Capitol, and if we have to the president. So I hope that the board will hear us and take action on these items.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Next speaker, please.
Tom Gilberti, spare the air is spare the lungs. Our winter drying out. We need our ventilation systems upgraded constantly. We need to check. You never thought that a 65 degree day in January and February could be as dangerous as it is. Bathrooms, it's time. Muni opens up, BART opens up the bathrooms under Market Street. Time has come. Muni needs to, and BART needs to clean up the elevators, upgrade a little bit. Take a ride on the platform elevators at Civic Center, on the street elevator at Powell. They're falling apart. Next, 26 years at South Beach Marina Apartments. Within 5 years there, a pattern kind of grew. People lived for 2 to 3 years and left. And I've seen a lot of people leave. In all that time, I'm only corresponding with one person. Overhead, please. Rodney Fong. He was the butcher at the Bayside Village Market. And I would tell him, you know, it's 2 to 3 years, and he would laugh, and it says 2 years. I'd build a clientele, and they're gone. 2 years. He was terribly frustrated. We're not building a rental market rate apartment in this city is unhealthy for any environment it goes into. It's just not a healthy 2-3 years. These people have to go because they are paying a huge amount of rent, and they can find cheaper digs somewhere else farther away. We don't create a healthy community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. I'm Dr. Jackie Stanford. I'm an educator and with expertise in race and community, race in school and society. I'd just like to support my friends and family in the community as we raise our voice about the trauma in our community and to remind us of the words of Nina Simone when she says in Mississippi, goddamn, school children are sitting in jail and now people are dying in the streets. And she asks the question, why can't you see it? Why can't you feel it? I don't know. I don't know.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. I want to thank everyone for coming out. We are here, we hear you, and we will be with you throughout this situation. We continue to, the community is in my heart and in my prayers, and we'll continue to work with you to try and resolve these issues for our community. So thank you for coming out. Madam Clerk, can you please read the adoption without committee reference?
Items 29 through 36 are being considered for immediate adoption without committee reference. A single roll call vote may enact these items. If a member objects, a matter may be removed and considered separately.
Supervisor Marr?
Thank you. Item 29.
Okay. Roll call vote on the remaining items.
On items 30 through 36, Supervisor Campos. Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, these items are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please read item number 29?
Item 29 is a resolution to urge the California State Legislature to amend state law for youth fare evasion.
Oh, Supervisor Marr.
Thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, I asked for a continuance of a week for this item. The Youth Commission discussed and debated the item and ended in strong support of this resolution. The Youth Commission Chair, Michael Lee, stated the criminalization of youth for fare evasion was among the Youth Commission's primary concerns in our years-long effort to establish a free immunity pass for youth. Props to Supervisor David Campos, Power, Casa Justa, and CCDC and other groups for advancing that major expansion of our public uni system. This resolution supports decriminalization of youth fare evasion. Years ago, led by Senator Carol Migden, the state changed the law allowing for adult fare evaders and other infractions like eating on public transit to be handled administratively and not criminally. So the decriminalization of youth fare evasion allows for less burden on the court system, no unnecessary conflicts with law enforcement, the option to replace fines for community service. But youth were exempted from this change, and this resolution urges the state government to decriminalize these infractions. Following the amazing grassroots campaign to bring free immunity for youth to San Francisco, the current law is completely out of step with our values, so this resolution really urges us to be consistent. It doesn't mean that youth who break the rules and are ineligible for free immunity for youth get a pass. It simply means that the case would be handled administratively like a parking ticket and not in the justice system. So I'm proud to have the unanimous support from the Youth Commission now and urge strong support for this policy. Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any other names on the roster. Can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted. Madam Clerk, can you please read the in memoriam?
Yes, Madam President. Today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following individuals on behalf of Supervisor Campos. For the late Mr. Mauricio Mejia, Mr. Alfonso Texidor, Mr. Mauricio Orellana. And on behalf of Supervisor Wiener and Supervisor Campos, for the late Mr. Edward Cookie Dough Robert Bell.
Okay, this brings us to the end of our agenda. Madam Clerk, is there any further business before us?
Madam President, that concludes our business for today.
Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.